Think about a time that Nintendo had a big PR nightmare on their hands. Could be anything. Them getting sued over Joy-Con drift, shutting down a fan game or a charity project. Take your pick. When those moments happened, fans were angry, and the media put Nintendo on blast. But let me ask you this. What happened next? Did Nintendo offer an apology or even acknowledge what they'd done?
No.
But here's the crazy thing. If we look at the weeks that follow when Nintendo gets bad press, and specifically what they tend to do next, an interesting pattern starts to pop up. August 14th, 2016. Nintendo goes after Pokemon Uranium, getting download links for this beloved fan game pulled from across the web. Fans of the project are devastated. Headlines explode with bad press. But just a week later, Nintendo drops new Pokemon Sun and Moon footage, and suddenly, everyone's talking about the next big thing. November 1st, 2022. Nintendo slaps Splatoon YouTuber Octoboy with a flurry of copyright claims, sparking outrage across YouTube and social media. But just 10 days later, Nintendo drops a trailer for an upcoming Splatoon event, and the public's attention shifts. November 19th, 2020. Nintendo shuts down the Big House Online, sending shockwaves through the Smash Bros. Community. Hashtags like Save Smash and Free Melee trend worldwide, drawing more attention to Smash than ever before. And what does Nintendo do? Just weeks later, they reveal Sephiroth for Smash Ultimate. We all lose our minds, and the headlines change, just like that. And devil's advocate, you might be sitting there thinking, so what, Clyde? Nintendo announces a lot of stuff, what's the big deal? Are you seriously saying they're trying to control the media?
Yeah, well, maybe that is what I'm saying.
Maybe that delicious Mario mac and cheese they fed us growing up wasn't so innocent after all. Brush your teeth, go to school, and if you ever try to emulate my games, I'll take you into my dungeon and you will never be seen again. Never. Never! Okay, but seriously, I'm just pointing out that if the timing of all of these announcements right after controversies really is just a coincidence, it sure does seem to happen a lot. But don't take my word for it. Look at what they did in the weeks that followed them canceling the Etikon shells for charity, or when they pulled the plug on the 3DS and WiiU eShops, or any of the numerous YouTubers they have copyright struck into oblivion over the years. Every single one of those stories blew up, trended for a week, and then, like clockwork, got buried when the Big N brought out something new and shiny to announce. This isn't wild speculation. It's a pattern. And I'm not one to bust out my tinfoil hat very often, but growing up, my dad had a saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. And friends, let's just say there's a lot of smoke here that Nintendo is hoping we'll conveniently forget about. So for today's video, we're going through 8 examples in modern gaming where Nintendo conveniently dropped a big announcement or trailer right after a controversy broke. And trust me, we're gonna get to the big one. How to this day, Nintendo is still dominating the narrative when it comes to their Palworld lawsuit. And spoiler alert, it does not involve that delicious mac and cheese. At least, I don't think it does. My name is Clyde, and welcome back to another episode of Nintendo is Not Your Friend. Whoa, what gives, Clyde? I thought you were done with Nintendo. Yeah, well, blame J.J. Abrams.
And it confirms the worst.
Somehow, Nintendo returns. Super Serial. Actually, this topic was a suggestion from Vigilante in our community Discord. He noticed this funny pattern of HBox's videos like consistently going between angry Nintendo do bad thing face and then like the following week, OMG reveal. So we talked about it and we put our heads together to try and figure out just how often Nintendo is engaging in this exact pattern. But I will say, one thing that shouldn't take a lot of detective work is your family's safety online. And that brings us to the sponsor of today's video, Aura. Aura is an all-in-one digital security service that protects your family from scams, identity theft, and even those sketchy links that your loved ones might be tempted to click on. And if you're a parent, this next part is really important. Aura is there to help make your life easier with parental controls that'll help filter out harmful content, limit screen time, and keep your little ones from downloading that free version of Minecraft that might just be loaded up with malware. Because let's be honest, today kids are practically raised on iPads and technology. One minute they're watching the Mario movie, and the next they're getting invited to shady Discord servers to talk about speedrunning 120 star. They're just not ready for that kind of frame data. Jokes aside, Aura helps you set boundaries so your kids can enjoy gaming safely. It's like a personal bodyguard for your whole family. Aura monitors your sensitive information across the dark web, blocks dangerous websites, and even alerts you in real time if your passwords or accounts have been compromised. Keeping your family safe online shouldn't be a guessing game. Take control of your digital security with Aura. Check out aura.com/NYF to get a 14-day free trial to access these tools, as well as their app's built-in VPN and antivirus protection. And a big mustache-sized thank you to Aura for sponsoring this video. Nintendo makes uranium. Pokemon go away. Alright, so let's start off with one of the most incredible, high-profile Pokemon fan games ever made. Pokemon Uranium. If you haven't heard of it, it's hard to put into words just how much work went into this thing. It's got a totally new story, new characters, new Pokemon, an entirely new region for players to explore. This is a project that took 9 years of development time from a very small, very passionate team of creators plugging away night after night in RPG Maker. This is very clearly a love letter to a series they adore. And when Pokemon Uranium released on August 6th, 2016, it surged to 1.5 million downloads. This fan game was so well received, in fact, that it was actually nominated at the Game Awards of that year under the Best Fan Creation category, alongside another notable project you've probably heard of called AM2R. But before either of those projects could enjoy the limelight, something strange happened. Both of them were quietly pulled from the nominations page overnight. No announcement, no reasoning, just gone. And you and I think we know what probably happened. My money's on someone at Nintendo having a little chat with Jeff Keighley.
You leave your face open, you're gonna get popped. See? See? Pop, pop, see?
This is all to say that in early August of that year, Pokemon Uranium was in the spotlight. Fans were enjoying the heck out of it, celebrating the hard work that had made it possible. And that's why it stung so much when just a week after its release, Nintendo's lawyers started to flex their muscles and download links started to disappear from around the web. These takedowns, coupled with the devs also preemptively taking down their own download links to avoid legal consequences, led to a firestorm of negative press. We're talking coverage from every major gaming news outlet. Threads all over Reddit, posts all over Twitter and Facebook, the world's forums totally ablaze-akin with outrage. And if you've ever wondered what a PR nightmare looks like visualized as a line chart, here's what the Google Trends shows us for Pokemon Uranium searches from August 1st to August 15th. Now, to the best of my knowledge, Nintendo never publicly commented on Pokemon Uranium. So that begs the question, what happened to this story? There were already more than 1 million downloads of that game floating around on the internet. That, coupled with its sudden and mysterious disappearance from the nominations list at the Game Awards, meant that Pokemon Uranium should have at least stayed in the public eye through December. But that's not what happened at all. Here's what the rest of August looked like on that trend line. And I put it to you that it's because of something Nintendo did here on August 18th, when they showed off brand new footage and brand new Pokemon for Pokemon Sun and Moon. Suddenly, sites like Kotaku and Polygon and IGN weren't headlining Pokemon Uranium anymore. Their title articles were all about the new Pokemon reveals for Sun and Moon. And just like that, Uranium was old news. Oh, you're old news. I don't want to play with you anymore. And yeah, this is frustrating. It's gutting to see Twitch, one of Pokemon Uranium's lead devs, say they felt forced to abandon what they would describe as one of their life's greatest works. And what really sucks about this situation is that because the story came and went in the blink of an eye, Nintendo never really had to grapple with what they'd done. Yes, copies of Pokemon Uranium are still floating out there in Google Drives and obscure forums, but that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is that Nintendo has turned dancing out of controversy into an art form, and as we'll see in these next few examples, it's hard to look away even when we know they're doing it. Case in point, when they decided to show off Tears of the Kingdom. Nintendo takes the Wii U and 3DS eShops down. On February 15th, 2022, Nintendo announced that following year, they'd be taking the Wii U and 3DS eShops offline for good. And credit where credit is due. While I'm not personally the biggest fan of taking a digital storefront offline, these decisions almost always come with consequences for the availability of those games, but at least Nintendo had the decency to announce the closure a year in advance. However, it's worth noting that this timeline also gave Nintendo the opportunity to plan around that date. They knew, for example, that when March 27th of 2023 rolled around, there was going to be some not so nice headlines talking about that decision. Headlines like the Wii U and 3DS eShops go dark forever were guaranteed to run. And they knew they were going to upset games preservationists, probably some owners of those consoles that were not too happy with the decision. They knew some level of heat was coming their way. So what did Nintendo do? Did they sit around and wait for bad headlines to pop up? No. Instead, they decided to trot out Eiji Aonuma to show off new gameplay and new footage of Tears of the Kingdom. And that footage was uploaded on, drumroll please, March 28th, 2023, the very next day after those servers went dark. So if you're a gaming publication, and you've only got a limited number of journalists on staff, and you can only choose to report on either Nintendo taking old systems offline or one of the most anticipated games of the console generation, you've got a pretty easy choice on your hands. It's not hard to see why most gaming outlets only chose to cover the latter. And I want to just say, I'm not throwing shade at news publishers here. If I, a consumer, was waking up on March 28th and I got served those two articles, I would probably click on the Tears of the Kingdom footage. This is a philosophy lesson we should all have learned by now from Joe Dirt. But I like articles about games preservation.
Well, that might be your problem. It's not what you like, it's the consumer.
And not to follow up Joe Dirt with like some philosophy lesson, but I want to point out that for every pair of eyeballs that's watching a trailer or an announcement from Nintendo, those same eyeballs can't also simultaneously be reading articles critical of the company. In the YouTube world, this is called an attention market, and it's a zero-sum game. Every company on Earth knows that the hours and days that follow a bad press story breaking are critical to what's going to happen next. Those moments determine whether a story will pick up steam or if they will peter out. By flooding the zone with cool stuff to pull our attention, Nintendo knows that it makes it harder for voices to gather around critical press. And the chances of those not so nice stories going away gets much higher. Keep this in mind as we talk about this next story, and particularly when we talk about Palworld here in a bit. Nintendo targets Octoboy. In the Splatoon community, there's a YouTuber that goes by the handle Octoboy. Octoboy is clearly a super fan of the games. They've uploaded almost 200 videos of events and collabs and silly antics and memes. It should be obvious to anyone with a pair of eyeballs that this person really likes Splatoon. And in October of 2022, they woke up one day to find that Nintendo had hit them with a series of copyright claims over the use of a camera mod they used to capture their community montage footage. Keep in mind, this wasn't someone cheating online or advertising hacks or weird wonky exploits. This was just a person using a camera tool to help them make videos effectively promoting Nintendo's game. And even still, Nintendo let it rip like they were fighting for their lives in a Beyblade tournament. So when the Splatoon community saw this happening, it's not surprising they put Nintendo on blast. A shower of coverage kicked up, including people talking about it on YouTube, TikTok, all over Reddit. And many people pointed out like, hey, if Nintendo's got a big problem with a camera mod like this, why go scorched earth? Why not just have a simple conversation with this creator? But of course, that's not how Nintendo operates, and that's not what happened. And right as this story was making its way through the Splatoon community, hitting the broader gaming press, Nintendo made an announcement. They decided that that was the perfect time to show off upcoming footage for a new Splatoon event. Hey y'all, come check out our new Splatoon event going on. We got a new website, a new trailer, a new season. Everyone's invited
Except Octoboy.
And the timing of this could just not be any more convenient for them. It makes me want to grow a mullet and run away.
You're not good enough for Splatoon. Go back to your sleepy and robot.
You little sissy boy!
Conveniently announcing Smash Bros. Characters. Alright, so these next three examples all involve character reveals for one of Nintendo's biggest titles at this point, and that's Smash Bros. They took place over several years, so I've put together a quick mock-up of what they look like from a bird's eye view on a calendar. And the three moments that I want us to zoom in on are as follows. The announcement for Dragon Quest's Hero on July 20th of 2019, Sephiroth on December 10th, 2020, and the teaser for the final character announcement, which we now know was Sora, on September 23rd, 2021. Now, curiously, If we roll back the clock on any of the announcements made here, we will find that Nintendo was in the press with negative headlines just days prior to these reveals. Take for example the fact that on July 20th, a massive class action lawsuit against Nintendo had been filed, alleging they were knowingly selling controllers with hardware defects.
Hey y'all, quick correction in post. I'm seeing articles mentioning that Hero was actually announced back in June, and as that is the case, I don't think there's any reason to believe these events are connected. Just wanted to include the correction here for transparency. I always want to try and get things right, but I make mistakes sometimes. The next two events preceding Smash Bros. Character reveals are accurate to the best of my knowledge. Okay, thanks, bye.
Likewise, back in 2020 and 2021, just weeks and days prior to these character reveals, Nintendo was getting absolutely flogged in the press for canceling Smash Bros. Events and fan-run tournaments. It's not an exaggeration to say that these character reveals absolutely had an impact on the narrative at that time. Conversations changed on Reddit and social media and Smash boards, and definitely in the press. And please, really quick, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I am not sitting here trying to convince you that every single time Nintendo, releases a character or makes a game announcement that they're secretly trying to bury bad press. I am not that far down the rabbit hole. But I do think two things can be true at once. It can be true that Nintendo has a ton of cool stuff to show off throughout the year for all of their properties, and that's totally divorced from what's going on in the broader gaming media and headlines. But it can also be true that sometimes Nintendo might be being selective about when they choose to show things off. And again, these are not unplanned tournaments or events that fans just decide, let's do it next weekend. No, these are things that are announced months, if not years prior. Nintendo knows well in advance about these events coming up. They know about their plan to shut them down, and they know there's going to be backlash. So it stands to reason that rather than let bad headlines linger for a long period of time, Nintendo decides to get creative and play a little offense. I personally look at the timeline around these announcements, and I'm going to be honest with y'all, it looks a little too coincidental to me. But I appreciate there are people out there that will look at all these stories and go, maybe it's just a series of coincidences. Keep your crazy conspiracy theories to yourself, Clyde. I think Nintendo's controlling the media.
Yeah, well, that's just like,
Your opinion, man.
Nintendo shuts down Etikon's charity controllers. Let's switch gears really quick and talk about another PR nightmare for Nintendo. One that arose from a horrific tragedy from a YouTuber named Desmond who went by the handle Etika. I'm not going to recap the entire story here because honestly it's quite heavy, and likewise there are already great documentaries online talking about the story from start to finish. But for the purposes of this story, just know that Etika was a prominent YouTuber and he freaking loved Nintendo. This guy's channel had more than 100 million views of people tuning in to watch his gameplay, his antics, his fun shenanigans. Almost always involving Nintendo games, and a lot of them involving Smash Bros. The guy loved Smash Bros on Switch, and he affectionately referred to his community as the Joy-Con Boys. And tragically, in 2018 and 2019, Etika dealt with a series of very horrific, very public mental health episodes, which resulted in him taking his own life. YouTubers, fans, and friends of his all over the world mourned losing such a special voice so young in his life. And honestly, it's incredible to see just how many people came together to celebrate all the joy and the laughter that he brought to his audience, and also to spread awareness about mental health. That's incredible, and it's very clear this guy meant a lot to his fans. And some of those fans came together to create these Etika-themed Switch controllers to raise money for the Jed Foundation in the name of suicide prevention. Personally, I think this kind of movement is awesome, and if I was sitting at Nintendo HQ, watching fans all over the world pour love and support for such an amazing cause, I would do something about it. I would help. I would amplify that message, especially considering the fact that Etika had thrown more than 100 million views of him sharing his passion and enthusiasm for Nintendo's games their way. But Nintendo did pretty much what they always do. They didn't care that it was a project to honor a fan's passing. They didn't care that it was for charity. They nuked the project all the same. And please, make no mistake, this story became an Avengers-level threat PR nightmare for Nintendo. There are not many headlines worse than a company punching down on fans trying to raise money for charity. Also, shout out to Ludwig because I talk about him creating a tournament under very similar pretenses in my Smash Bros video, so if you want to check that out, here's a link. But yeah, the point is, this story is about as bad press can get. Social media, Twitter, Facebook, gaming headlines, everywhere fans looked, they were greeted with this story. A story with headlines so damaging, it would make even the most hardened CEO's hair stand on end. So what did Nintendo do? They decided that was the perfect time to take the world on a vacation.
Well, I guess you've seen just about everybody.
I've been waiting my whole life
nice to meet you.
Oh, I'm gonna sell you so many loot boxes. Take note of all the dates on these articles, because they were all buried a week later when Nintendo trotted out Miyamoto himself to show off Nintendo World. And before I get any comments misinterpreting what I'm saying, I am not making the claim here that Nintendo built a whole-ass theme park to distract us from them nuking the Etikon story. Obviously, that is nutter butter. That is not what I'm saying. But is it possible that they moved up the timeline for this reveal, shoved it in our faces in big, bold capital letters at the precise moment that it was most beneficial to them? I'm not gonna rule it out. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, wait a minute, Clyde, maybe mid-December is just the normal time of year for theme parks to show off new rides and new venues, huh? Yeah, well, I'm here to tell you that is absolutely not the case, and that is not normal in that industry. I am not a theme park industry insider, but a simple Google search will show you that the vast majority of the players in that space, from Six Flags all the way down to the smaller mom and pop locations, consistently show off their new rides and venues in 2 months of the year, August and September, centered around major conferences. But Nintendo, going totally against the grain of how that industry normally operates, they decided mid-December. That's a great time to show off our new theme park, right after being torn to shreds in the mainstream media about how they handled the Etikon story. Gee, that's really interesting timing. And I also want to say really quick, I have heard claims online that there was suspicion or doubt as to whether or not the Etikon, effort to raise money for charity was sincere. And I think those are fair, sincere questions to be asking, especially anytime money is involved and it's supposed to be going to charity. And I will say, if Nintendo had released a statement saying that, oh, hey, we're shutting down this charity effort because we actually have doubts about its authenticity, we're trying to protect our fans, then I would totally give Nintendo the benefit of the doubt here. But when they say nothing, when they let their lawyers do smash and grabs on these projects, and then conveniently a week later or 2 weeks later they show up with some big shiny announcement, that's when my Peter tingle starts to go off. And I want to say, I wouldn't blame anyone for wanting all of these stories to be coincidences. Part of me wants these to be coincidences. I mean, we don't need more ammunition to knock Nintendo. There is plenty of anti-consumer stuff they've done over the years. We don't need more to add to the pile. But friends, if there was ever an example that lends credibility to the idea that Nintendo is playing strategy offense with their news releases, it's this next one. It's time to talk about Palworld. Nintendo and the Pokemon Company sue Palworld. Media Blitz. Nintendo has been at the heart of a ton of controversies over the years. We've covered a handful of their modern ones in today's video, but please make no mistake, their decision to go after the Palworld developers is among the most visible they've ever made. And it's not hard to imagine why. Nintendo took a game with 25 million players, more than 300,000 reviews with a very high rating on Steam, and announced that they're suing them. That lawsuit was announced September 19th, 2024, and yes, all hell broke loose. Whether we like it or not, this is a defining moment for Nintendo as a company. This story is so much bigger than whether or not game mechanics can be copyrighted, or where's the line between creative and plagiaristic. Setting aside the fans and the feelings on both sides of this argument, we have to acknowledge that this lawsuit will have huge implications for the future of the gaming industry. And the key thing in all this is that Nintendo knew that when this lawsuit came to light, they were kicking a hornet's nest unlike any they ever had before. They knew that gamers were going to lose their minds. They knew the press was going to lose their minds. And at this point, you're probably sitting back in your chair going, yeah, alright, Clyde, we get the picture. You know, Nintendo must have announced some trailer or new game that following week, right? The weeks that followed Nintendo's announcement that they were going after the Palworld developers saw not just one reveal or two reveals, but a full-on barrage of them. In the week that followed the announcement of that lawsuit, Nintendo and the Pokemon Company put out more trailers, press releases, announcements than they have in a very long time. Pokemon Unite updates, Pokemon TCG announcements, Pokemon Go events, Nintendo Museum details, Nintendo Switch game announcements, a new music streaming service, the world's ugliest alarm clock. This is noise. It's a technique called flooding the zone, because when the audience and the media has to parse through all of these stories, it makes it way harder for them to focus on this story. They make the important thing go away, and miraculously they come out looking like the good guy. Today we are announcing just so many amazing things in the world of Nintendo and Pokemon. Sir, question. Any comment on the lawsuit? The what? Sorry, next question, please. No, sir, your company just announced they're planning on suing the creators of Palworld. Yes, our announcement, that our Pokemon players are our friends. They're our pals. Yes. No, not the Miyamoto dungeon. No! Look, I am not trying to convince you that Nintendo is pure evil. That's not what my videos are about, and besides, loads of companies have PR response teams just like this. No, the point of these conversations is to ask ourselves in the audience, what can we do to help keep these companies accountable? What can we do to make sure we're not losing the thread when a big shiny story comes to take our attention away? We as consumers have to stay vigilant, because until companies actually start to take regular responsibility or acknowledge when they've stuffed up, it'll continue to remain just one more reason as to why Nintendo or any other company is not your friend. Alright, thanks for checking out today's video. I hope it made you laugh. I hope it made you think. I hope you didn't feel too dystopian about the future of the games industry. I'm in disbelief saying it, but we are approaching the 15K sub mark for the channel, so if you enjoyed it, I kindly ask that you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. It would really mean a lot to me. Next time, we're going to be talking about a new company, a company that just did a re-release on PC for a prominent game, and I feel pretty strongly replaying it that they're treating the audience like babies. And not cute animal fur babies like Benji over here. No, I'm talking about like actual babies that like have impulse control problems and lack basic motor functions. Wait a minute, I think that describes Benji too. It's going to be a fun one, so I do hope you'll join us for it. And as always, thank you so much to our patrons for making this episode possible.
And a big freaking mustache thank you to Malik for the help with the script, Vigilante for helping with the ideation, and Jim from Jim's Music Dungeon for voicing memes. I've included a link to his YouTube channel in the description, so if you're into MIDI music and game reviews and stuff like that, check him out.
See y'all next time, and Mustache Man out of here.